Wait. Before we start, just want to make sure we're clear here. While this podcast talks about sobriety, mental health, and addiction, it is not meant to replace professional medical advice. Welcome to Sisters in Sobriety.
I'm Kathleen.
And I'm Sonia.
And we're ex-sisters-in-law, brought together in marriage and bonded through our sobriety journey.
Join us as we talk sobriety, addiction, and everything in between. You're in for quite a ride. And our Substack is buzzing with amazing content, from creative mocktail recipes to insightful courses and reflective exercises. There is something for everyone. Don't miss out. It's a great way to add some extra joy and depth to your journey. Check it out. Welcome to Sisters in Sobriety. This week, we are jumping into the messy and complicated topic of family dynamics in recovery. Joining us is Amber Hollingsworth, a licensed professional counselor and master addiction counselor.
Amber is also the powerhouse behind the wildly popular YouTube channel, Put the Shovel Down. Through her work with the Family Recovery Academy, Amber equips families with actionable tools to support their loved ones through addiction without enabling or burning themselves out in the process.
From her invisible intervention method to her strength-based coaching approach, Amber is changing the conversation around addiction one family at a time. So we will unpack how the traditional intervention model can go wrong, how middle-aged women are uniquely impacted by alcohol culture, and why it's time to rethink addiction as a cycle, not just a disease. Hi, Amber. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me. So happy to be here.
Thanks for being here. So can you share a little bit about your own path into addiction recovery counseling?
Sure. Well, I'm not in recovery myself. That's usually the first question people want to know. But I come from an addicted family. Like, seriously, my sister and myself, we're the only people that aren't addicted. And that's only because we just never even picked it up, because we knew we would be. I mean, my grandparents, parents, siblings, aunts, every person. In fact, my mother ended up dying of meth addiction. My grandmother died of cancer related to her alcohol addiction. I mean, it's just rampant everywhere. All that being said, that's still not why I'm in the field. It sounds really good. It's all true, but I actually just accidentally ended up in the field. Once I got here, I felt right at home. Kathleen, you were saying earlier about how couples is just like so natural for you. And I feel like however I got here, it just feels like this is it. I understand the energy because I grew up in it, but this is definitely the place for me.
Wow. Amber, did you always have an understanding about addiction and that's what was going on in your family?
I didn't, Sonia. In fact, I didn't even know that everyone in my family was addicted until I was already in the field. Like, I knew everyone did drugs and alcohol, but when you grow up and it's just so normal, like, you don't even think about it. Words not even thrown around. Like, it doesn't even occur to you, as crazy as that sounds. It's normal. Like, you don't even think about
It's
it.
not crazy. It doesn't sound crazy. Sonia and I talk things that have happened in our joint family, how we just think it's normal because we're just used to it. And then if we tell someone else, they're like, what? Like, oh.
Right?
So we get it.
Yeah.
What led you to start your YouTube channel, Put the Shovel Down?
Well, I was in a session one day and someone said to me, and actually people used to say this all the time, but it just got my attention. Someone said, I wish I just had that on recording. And I thought, I guess I could put that on recording, right? Because people always say, I wish I just had that on recording to remind myself. It's what Amber says, over and over and over. And so that was the thing that provoked my, thinking about it, I guess. And then it became this sort of mission to really help families understand how to work with their addicted loved ones. If they're in denial, how to get them to get help. Because I had been working with people who had addictions for years and years at that point. And for my entire career, everyone I worked with didn't want to see me. So I was completely used to dealing with people who didn't think they had a problem, didn't want to see me. And over all those years, 10 plus years, I had developed ways and techniques of understanding them and building rapport and getting through to them. And so in my mind, there was a lot of things that family members could do. In fact, there was so many more things that families could do that I couldn't do in an hour a week, and they had all the leverage and the influence. And so I just wanted to teach families that they're not powerless, that there's a lot of things that you can do to get through to someone in denial. It's just all the opposite of what you're already doing, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Amber, did you start with families or did you start counseling people in addiction and then move on to families? So what really got you about that family dynamic?
Well, the first 10 years of my career, I worked in a private psychiatric hospital that had units for mental health, addiction units, intensive outpatient, the gamut. And so the very first assignment I had was to create and run an intensive outpatient program for addicted teenagers. And let me tell you, I was in over my head. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was my very first job, and I wasn't about to say that. So I just said, sure, I'll do it. And so I had to create this program not knowing what I was doing, touring with like 12 to 15 addicted teenagers that are just looking at me like, what are you going to do? And so I did that. I got many stories from that. I worked in adult detox. I worked all over that hospital, mental health, all the things. And so I had to just trial and error figure it out. And the first thing, and probably the most important thing, is I had to figure out how to make these teenagers come back 3 times a week and sit in the room with me. Because if I didn't, my bosses would know I didn't know what I was doing. So the first thing I had to do is figure out, how do I build rapport? How do I capture them? How do I keep them coming? And through that process, there's a lot of learning. I've got a million stories. I did that for many, many years. I loved it. Built this giant family program that was attached to it, because one of the things I quickly learned is that I wasn't going to get anywhere until I got the parents on board, because all these kids were about, and I'm going to say kids in this context, but you can apply this to any age, because over my career, it's been the same thing, all the ages, is they only want to talk about how their parent or their family or their spouse is driving them crazy. And so you can't get past that discussion until you can get the family to get out of the bad guy role. And so that kind of prompted me to understand that you have to deal with this whole family system. Otherwise, you're just going to beat your head against the wall. And eventually, when I left and I started my own private practice, I decided I'm going to deal with this family systems, because it wasn't working just for people to drive up, drop their loved one off at my office and say, fix them. It just wasn't working. So out of necessity, I came up with this model of dealing with the whole family. Only I'm not as brave as Kathleen is, and I don't like to get in the ring with everybody at the same time, everybody fighting. So I brought on some other people on board with me, and they became the family counselors. And I usually work with the person who has an addiction, and we give everybody their own person. We call it lawyering, because it's kind of like lawyering. And everybody has their own advocate. And then behind the scenes, just like lawyering, a lot of it is dealt with behind the scenes, mediating it out, asking, hey, I need your client to stop doing this. And then they say, okay, well, we'll stop doing that if you stop doing this, or start doing this, or whatever. And so we have this whole model where the whole family is seen, but everybody has like privacy, confidentiality, and the safety to talk about things openly and honestly. So that's the quick version of how I got. So
wow. I could nerd out on this for a really long time, Amber, because when I see couples, many of the couples have their own individual therapists. And unfortunately, and this is no slight to some of the amazing individual therapists that see my clients, but some of the individual therapy works against the couple's therapy, right?
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure I'm understanding this, that in your practice, in your model, you would have individual therapists for each person in the family who would then advocate for that person, but also you keep the system in mind.
Right.
You keep the whole, because if one piece is out of place in the system, as we know, then the system falls apart.
Exactly.
So you advocate for each other, but then you have the system in mind. Do I have that right?
Yes, that's exactly right. We work together to make the family system work, but we just want to give each person their own privacy and safety to be open and honest and not worry they're going to start a fight or not shut down, not make things worse. And so I love what you said, Kathleen, about how sometimes individual counseling can make it worse, because the thing of it is everybody, when they come to counseling, they have their own narrative. I mean,
Right.
sometimes with people who have addictions, they're just outright lying. They're just,
Yes.
but beyond that, because most of the time it's really not that. Most of the time it's that they're telling their side of the story. And from seeing people who have addictions for so many years, I can tell you I have never gotten the full story. And if I did not have those family counselors helping me understand what was really happening in the background, I would fall for it every single time, even though I know the deal. But they're so convincing because they believe it. And so, and the same thing on the family side, like they tell their version too, and they leave out, certain parts. And so, if I didn't have it that way, I would be advising people and encouraging people in the absolute wrong direction because I wouldn't have the full story.
For sure. For sure. Absolutely. What is one thing that you wish more families understood about addiction?
Okay, now I could really go on forever.
Yeah.
I wish families understood that they're putting their loved one in a constant position to defend their behavior by trying to directly come at them and get them. They're trying to get them to see the issue, and they're desperate, and they're scared, and they're doing everything that they can think of and everything that anybody naturally normally would do because this person that they love is self-destructing. And not only are they self-destructing, but they're destroying the whole family and you with them. And so you're trying to get their attention and get them to see it. But the harder you try to push that issue, the longer it takes to get someone to see the issue because they get caught up in defending their actions and constantly telling you why you're wrong and constantly telling themselves why you're wrong. And so what they end up doing is they end up becoming this giant distraction that slows down the process of this person figuring it out. And so if families could understand that the most enabling, the most problematic thing that they do is play the bad guy role, and they can stop playing the bad guy role, people figure it out pretty quick because they don't have anything else to blame because they're not so focused on how you're wrong. And then they start to see, yeah, man, I did that and I wish I wouldn't. But the family's natural response is to come in and protect and help this person, but they're actually keeping them stuck. They're not creating the problem, but they're slowing down the process of getting better by playing this bad guy role.
Yeah, it makes me think about, so we all know the show Intervention. And so when we talk about interventions, when is that traditional model helpful and when does it backfire?
That's a great question. It's not that I'm against a traditional intervention model. It's an old model called the Johnson model. It's like the one you see on TV. I think if someone is using to the point that they're literally imminently putting themselves and other people in danger, like they're gonna die if we don't intervene. They're gonna something really bad is gonna happen. And that they know that they're addicted, but they just can't put the brakes on it. I think that intervention model is the fastest way to sort of swoop in and take charge. And it can be very effective. I'm not against it at all. However, if you're dealing with someone who really doesn't think that they have a problem, they're not convinced that they actually are addicted or that it is an issue, and you do an intervention, you might can get them to go to treatment from the sheer pressure of it, but they're not done with that behavior. They are going to come out and finish. They're going to go through all of what I call the bargaining stages. You cannot skip the bargaining stages. You can speed them up, which I can talk about, but you can't skip them. And so even if you can push this person to go to treatment from doing that kind of intervention, they're still going to come out. They're not done yet until they've convinced themselves. And that's a lot of time. I mean, just to do one of those interventions like that is thousands and thousands of dollars. And that's not even the treatment. That's just the intervention. And it definitely doesn't work unless you do it like the real deal way, which is to have an interventionist come in, and get the entire family together. If you don't have everybody on board, it's not going to work. You can't have any cracks anywhere. Otherwise, so I do think that there's a time and place for it. The situations on the show that they use it for, those are desperate, hardcore situations, and those are the situations it needs to be used for. I, on the other hand, deal a lot with people that are still somewhat functioning. I do a lot of functioning alcoholics, college kids sometimes. I mean, they're not living on the street and they're not completely convinced that they're out of control. They may think that maybe they drink or use too much, but they're not convinced that, that they're just this worst addict alcoholic that their family's making them out to be. And so because of that methodology is not only not going to stick, but a lot of times there's a lot of hurt feelings and resentment that people just don't get over because it becomes to their attention that, oh my gosh, like everyone in my life was conspiring against me. Everyone in my life was talking behind my back and thinks these negative thoughts about me. And it's hard to get past that.
What are some common mistakes that families make when they do confront a loved one about their addiction?
They do it too directly because they're in a hurry for the person to connect the dots. So they try to connect the dots for the person. There's actually ways you can just sort of help the person see the different dots, but don't connect it for them to the addiction. Let them do that connection. Because when you start connecting it to the addiction, they start to get defensive immediately. There's a lot of reasons. Because they don't want to give it up, because they think you're wrong, because they don't want to be pushed into doing something they're not ready to do. So when they feel like you're coming at them about this certain behavior, they immediately get their guard up. The other thing people do is they use this term like, you need to get help or you need to go to treatment. And those terms tend to hit people's buttons all wrong. And so I a lot of times steer people away from just using certain terminology because just the word itself, even though it's just semantics, just hits people wrong and it just provokes a defensiveness. Now, some people are defensive outwardly where they'll just like tell you what they're thinking. But even people that aren't necessarily argumentative with you, they're defensive on the inside. So they're either saying it or they're not, but I promise them. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like Kathleen and I mishandled an intervention with my brother. We called everyone we knew. We called everybody and just hoping that someone would be able to get through to him. I don't know. It came from a really good place, but it just...
Right. I mean, everybody in these situations are doing what your natural instincts would tell you to do, which is to take care of and protect your loved one, And I think you bring up a good point, Sonia, in that's another thing that can really backfire on you is calling in other people. Because if your loved one finds out that you did that, they're not going to get I mean, that's the one thing that they won't forgive. That they're going to be mad about that for years.
He hasn't talked to us since. It's been 5 years.
Do not. Sorry.
I mean, I don't think it's funny, but it is. But it's like, it was obviously, if we had just talked to you, we wouldn't have done it. And so now we are stuck with the...
You know what? It didn't even occur to me to seek, for us, Sonia, to like go and seek coaching or help on that and how to deal with your brother, my ex-husband.
I think that from what Amber said, what I think is we were in such a rush. Like we looked at it as such an emergent. We were. Like, it was just this is, he had stopped talking to us. And so I think we started to freak out a bit and thought like we had all these scenarios of what could possibly be going on over there. And then at the same time, like you were in the middle of a divorce and your kid is going back and forth. And so we were like throwing everything at the wall to see what would stick.
Yeah, it's like your house is on fire, right? So naturally, when the house is on fire, you're just desperate. You're running in there to grab them out of it, right? And I just think that's such a normal, natural response. And even myself, I have that same instinct to do it. And occasionally, I mess it up and listen to that dang voice in my head, and every time I do, I'm like, dang it, you know better. But I mean, it's I don't blame families at all for what they're doing because that is the natural response, and it comes from a loving, caring place. It just, when it comes to this specific issue, can so often backfire. The thing about talking to other people is people just really see it as disloyal, and behind. I mean, it just, I don't know why, but it just, of all the things, that's the one thing. I've had like spouses, they'll go to the church and talk to the church about doing, oh my gosh, or go to the best friend, or it doesn't end well.
We basically went to every person he had ever been to AA with, and like past sponsors.
Yeah.
Like calling in the reinforcements.
It certainly was not anonymous.
Did not work.
It didn't work. Speaking of, so that's what I'm going to call the visible intervention. What is the invisible intervention? Can you explain that to us? So, next time, which I don't think there's going to be a next time, you know what I mean, Kathleen? But like, if there was a next time, what would we do?
So basically, in the invisible intervention, I basically teach families to do exactly what I would do if they brought me their loved one. Only they can just do it so much more effective because they have so much more time and leverage with the person than I do. And now it's harder for them because their emotions are tied up into it. So I don't want to make it sound like it's easy, but essentially the first thing you have to do is step out of the bad guy role if you're playing that part. And usually the person that's coming to me is playing that part because they're the primary one. If they're the ones that are trying to help the person, they're usually the primary player, which is usually the parent, the spouse, maybe the sibling, but there's this main sort of leader of this, mission to get through to this person. So you have that bad guy role. And so the first thing you have to do is step out of that role. Then the second piece of this formula is you have to build credibility with the person. I call it building credit, just like you build credit at the bank if you want to buy a house or something. And in our invisible intervention, I actually teach you like how to keep score. Like if you hear these words, it's like plus this many. If you hear these words, it's like minus so many, just to make it, objective. And obviously, those numbers are just numbers that I kind of made up and guesstimated, but it gives you an idea of where am I at and how's my credit today. And so you have to build credit with the person. And in order to do that, you have to make this person believe and understand that you understand where they're coming from, because they don't care what you have to say when they don't like you and they think you're the bad guy. In fact, not only do they not care, but they'll just do it just to get back at you. They'll just keep drinking in your face just because. And so, but even if you get out of the bad guy role, but you don't build credibility, maybe, they're not mad at you. If you don't have credibility, they don't care what you have to say because you don't understand them. It's kind of like you might love your grandma, but you might not listen to her advice because you might think, yeah, but she don't get it. She doesn't get the situation I'm in. So you listen to her, you appreciate her, but you're not going to listen to that advice because you think this person doesn't get me. So in order to help someone do that, there's just a lot of like active listening skills you can use, looking at things from their perspective, seeing and understanding their side. And that's exactly what I would do when I would get a client, right? I would just spend the time to see things from their point of view. And that doesn't mean I agree with everything. I mean, I'm an addiction counselor. They pretty much know that I kind of, want them to stop doing whatever they're doing, immediately. It's kind of part of the deal. But I hear what they're saying. And when you do that, you're using a lot of empathy and active listening. You activate the right centers of their brain that actually allows learning to take place. Because now they don't have to feel defensive against you. They don't have to be worried that you're going to try to push them into anything or make them deal with anything. So they can actually gives them the room and freedom to actually think about the situation critically and figure it out. So you're out of the bag of role. You build credibility, and at the same time, you allow the natural consequences to take place. Now, this is super important. This is the part people have a hard time, and it's hard for me too, to understand the difference between punishment and natural consequences. Punishment is anything that you enforce. Any rule that you set, any, if you do this, then this is the thing. That's a punishment. It cannot come from you. It needs to come from the natural world order. So anything else that doesn't come from you is going to be a natural consequence. Because if it comes from you, it doesn't count because it's your fault when it comes from you, as far as the other person's concerned, right? They don't see the issue. They just see that you're being mean, or you're unfair, or you're trying to be controlling, or you're so uptight, you can't let things go. That's what they see and learn from it when it's coming from you. And so you have to let the world be the bad guy and you be the good guy. So you don't fix it. And this is the opposite of what families are doing. What families are naturally doing is they're fixing everything in the world because they don't want these bad things to happen to you. You know, they're paying for the lawyers, they're calling the boss and telling them, you know, whatever excuse. They're calling the teacher, they're asking for the extra credit. But inside the house, they're telling you what a sorry sack of low-down piece of you-know-what you are. You're never going to amount to anything, and you're ruining your family, and you're traumatizing your kids. So they're fixing all the outside stuff. But inside the context of the relationship, they're angry. I mean, rightfully so. But they're negative to this person. So that consistently leaves the person with the wrong point of view, which is, my problem is you, right? Because I'm passing. I got a job. I'm making money. I'm blah, blah, you know, like, and so it's given the complete wrong impression. You want to flip that to the exact opposite.
This is a tough one, Amber, because I feel like the natural consequences as a family member is very difficult to watch have happen to your family, because the natural consequences could be legal charges, could be losing job, could be losing a marriage, could be like death, I'm assuming, to the extreme. Right. That is a difficult thing.
It's extremely difficult. It is painful, and it is against every instinct that you have. I completely get that, but it's what works. You know, and some things you might not can tolerate, and so have people sort of decide where they can tolerate, because a lot of times their consequences are your consequences too. You know, if this is your spouse and maybe they're the income provider and you're not the income provider, you know, there are consequences that apply to you and your children. And so there are moments where you just, it doesn't make sense for you to let that happen. But any time that you can let those things happen and not fix it, and inside the context of relationship actually have empathy to the person, this is the formula that creates learning. So once you have these things in place and you got your credit score good, at some point, something's going to happen. They don't have to hit bottom. They don't have to lose everything. But, you know, they're going to have a bad day. They're going to wake up feeling terrible. They're going to do something they regret, whatever. And then they're going to talk to you about it because you're a safe person. And then now you have influence. And what you say, they want to hear because they feel safe with you and they feel like you get them. And they actually care and trust what you have to say. And sometimes they'll get themselves in a really tight spot. This is what happens to me. You know, I'm like aligning with them, and then they get themselves in a super bad spot, you know, and then I say, oh my gosh, we got to get you out of this. Like, let me sign you up for this program. We'll get you out of that charge. I'm going to write you a letter. And then they're like, let me go. Like, I can get in there tonight. And then you got them to go to treatment. They feel like you helped them. Because you did help them. But, you know, like, versus the other way, when you're just the villain. So you sort of build credit, you get that trust, you leverage your influence in your relationship, because that relationship you have really is your only leverage. And I learned that through all of those years of working with those teenagers and everybody else. Like, that's the only thing I have is the relationship. And so you don't want to damage your only leverage, which is what family members are usually doing.
Definitely. We did this. We did this. I am thinking back to some things.
Cringing.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm cringing. Yep.
Yeah.
And coming from someone who's a family or a couples therapist and someone who's in recovery, yeah, you're seeing it, you know, like for 20 miles coming. So your alarm bells are probably going off like even earlier than other people's, because you know what you're looking at between the two of you, you know, and so you're like, whoa, you know, and you're trying to slam the brakes on, which is completely understandable. But even if you got this person to show up to counseling, I promise you the only thing they would talk about is you.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Still, actually, this is what would be.
So I'm saying to these people, I'm like, listen, you're paying a lot of money for your loved one to come see me talk negative about you. Like, you don't want to do that. So, you know, because usually family members paying it. They might be driving them there.
Yeah.
And all for like just to have So your loved one has a venting board to complain about you. Yeah.
So we're going to switch gears a little bit to strengths-based coaching. What is that? What is strengths-based coaching?
Well, now that I have the YouTube, I love it because so many family members are actually learning to do this behind the scenes before their person ever either comes to see me or anybody. It doesn't have to be me. But they've set the situation up correctly. So what's amazing is these days when people come to see me, they're in some level of active stage of change, which is amazing. That's never happened in my career as an addiction counselor. But when they do come to see me, I do all those same things. I build credibility with the person. I understand them, and I look specifically for what are this person's strengths? What are they good at? I use this word called your genius, which is kind of where your talents meet your passion. And that's your genius area. And I look for that. And then I listen for their value systems, for what they care about. And then I use those two things to help encourage them in the right direction. So, for example, if someone's talking to me about their kids and how much they love their kids, someone else might come at that and say, yeah, you love your kids, but look what you're doing to them. Whereas I might say, wow, like you care about your kids so much, you're just willing to sacrifice this and that and the other. Like you put your kids, like that's the most important thing to you. And I'm just reflecting their values back to them, because when I do that, then they connect the dot. That's what I mean when I say don't connect the dot for them. And then they're like, yeah, this is important to me. And I am willing to sacrifice whatever needs sacrifice for my kids. Or who do I want to be? My integrity, my work ethic. And I listen for those things and I watch for those things. And then I just help them see what they're good at. And I try to redirect their addictive, obsessive energy into something positive. I basically get them excited about something else that's pretty much incompatible with the addictive behavior. And I'm like, use your superpower for the good. I'm like, I love your obsessive tendencies of I'm going to do what I'm going to do no matter what. Let's just put it in a good direction that's working for you, that you feel proud of. And so it's a redirection of energy.
So how do you help them connect with their values if they're so deeply entrenched in their habit? Like, is it that piece that you're saying of like, okay, you're bringing out the positives, that their strengths, then you're aligning it to their values? What's that next piece? How, if they're physically, addicted to something, emotionally addicted to something, then how do you do that?
Well, the first part of that question is how do I get to those values? It's pretty easy because what people talk about is usually what they value. Even if their behavior is completely against what they're saying to you, you can tell when they're talking to you genuinely about what they care about. And so you can, for me, that's usually pretty easy to see. And it's fairly easy to see their strengths because I'll listen to what they've done in the past. I see a lot of businessmen and I'm like, man, you built a freaking empire. Like, that's badass. How did you do that? And I just help reconnect them to who they are. So it's kind of easy for me to see that. And honestly, I think probably anybody could if they just were looking for it. Then if they're physically dependent or something like that, that's the second part of your question, I think, Kathleen. Sometimes a person does like have to go to detox or something to get the gear shifted. But what I'm trying to do initially is get them motivated to make the decision to do whatever it is they need to do. A lot of the people I see are able to do it without having to go to treatment, but not all of them.
Okay.
Some of them, like, all right, let's get this done. We're going to go. We're going to get you a detox. We're going to whip you up in shape. We're going to put you in IOP, and we're going to get on the road with this, And then they're like, yeah, let's do it. Let's get this done. Let's rip the Band-Aid off. And that usually requires them trying it a few times on their own and then being like, you know what, this just isn't working. Maybe I need to take this step right here first. Yeah. So sometimes we do have to kind of take a preliminary step, but the goal is to get them motivated and ready to do it before having them do it.
there were a lot of values for me that I found out I had in recovery. So what are some key values you see people rediscover in recovery that they had let go?
I think all the normal ones like integrity, work ethic, creativity, um, being a loving, caring person to the people they care about, friend, sibling, parent, child, all of those things that are natural values to most people. And you just listen for what that is. And it is slightly different for each person. What do they care about? What's important to them? Who do they want to be? How do they see themselves? So, like, sometimes families will come and they'll say, "Oh, he thinks he's the best father ever," or "She thinks she's the queen." I'm like, "Okay, that's great because that tells us who they want to be and how they see themselves." And instead of telling them that they're not, let's help them see that, yeah, they are, and let's help them reconnect to that even more. Because it doesn't work to try to tell someone that they're not this person that they see themselves as.
They're really going to resist that. Yeah, for sure. I see that also in the couple's dynamic. That's aside from the addiction, right? You can see those values really clearly. What role does shame play in traditional approaches? And how does this strength-based coaching circumvent, or does it, the shame piece?
It's interesting balance between allowing someone to see the severity of the problem, because they have to see that it's severe enough to take some pretty big steps, but do it in a way that keeps their ego intact. I'm like, dude, of course you're a freaking alcoholic. Look what happened. Like, of course, like, how could you not have a drinking problem? They're like, I know, right? And so it's like you sort of set it up in a way that allows them to acknowledge it, but it doesn't mean that they're this horrible, terrible person. It's weird because it's almost like acknowledging it while minimizing it. Yeah, we all have an addiction. Yeah, sure. Like, and then so it's like you're saying it's not that horrible thing. And actually by saying that, they're able to grab a hold of it and acknowledge it, as opposed to when you're trying to say, you're the worst human being. How could you do this? You're trying to get them convinced that it's the most horrible thing. They just resist it longer. And you're like, yeah, that's the problem. So it's you're allowing them to see it, but not be scared of it, I guess.
And I like that. You're allowing them to see it, but not be scared of it.
Sometimes I just say, hey, look at all this energy you put into this, man. If we put it somewhere else, what could happen?
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amber, we're going to move on to a little bit more about alcohol and women, and especially middle-aged women like Kathleen and I. And so...
Are we middle-aged women? Really?
Yeah. Double your age. We're going to die around then. Yes.
Oh my God. I'm right there.
And so Amber and I talked a little bit before we recorded about a lot of like women saying things like, the wine is my thing. Like, just leave me alone. And so why do you think middle-aged women especially are resistant to feedback about their drinking?
I think there's several reasons. One is just culture, where it's just expected and normalized, and it's the popular thing to do. So there's that. But beyond that, a lot of women, middle-aged women, self-sacrifice everything else. They work, they take care of children, they take care of the house. Women tend to put their own needs on the back burner completely. And so in their mind, it's their one thing, right? It's like, I do everything. Having a couple of glasses of wine at night is my one thing. And that's their defensiveness around it. And it does feel like they're one thing because they're not getting their needs met in any other ways. And they're not allowing themselves self-care and pleasure and time off and all of the things. It really is their only one thing. And that becomes a problem. And then eventually, just like any other addictive substance, if you put it in long enough, it's going to get a hold of you. And we could talk about the science of that, but it eventually gets you,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, how does self-care get twisted into the justification for drinking? But what I'm hearing you say is that when there's nothing else, when everything else is put on, like yourself is like when you are being put on the back burner and you don't have anything else and it's the only thing, it's like oh, I'll have that wine and I'll feel this natural release. You can potentially have the wine while putting kids to bed, unfortunately, or like doing other things. So is it, I don't want to answer for you, but is that why? Is that why it becomes
I think
the
initially, yeah, I
justification?
mean, it's the whole, it's my me time. That's the phrase
Right.
people usually use. It's my me time. Or, they drink with their girlfriends. They have play dates and the girlfriends get together and the kids play and they drink wine or whatever. And so it's my me time. And so it starts out like that. But eventually, when you do it regularly enough, the whole biology of the situation kicks in and your body gets used to it. And then what most people don't realize specifically with alcohol is it's the rebound effect. It's what's
Mm.
happening when you're not drinking. So, like, after drinking, like the next day, you're having this rebound effect of all of these brain chemicals that are not great. They're anxious, they're irritable, they're jittery, they're restless. And so now you have this anxious restlessness inside, and now you really need your me time. So, what people don't realize is that I need this so badly because I'm doing this, right? And it's my only thing that relaxes me. It's the only thing that shuts my mind off. It's the only thing that, helps me, whatever. But they don't understand that a lot of that is because of the rebound effect from the actual drinking. It's the after the next day effects.
So, Amber, what is your approach then when you're working with high functioning women who drink but they don't identify as having a problem, or they look at an addict as something so far removed from who they are?
Usually people think it's an issue more than they admit, especially to their families. So they may not call it alcoholism. They may not say it's this bad, but on some level, they're like, yeah, I really do feel like crap in the mornings, or yeah, I really do take it too far sometimes. There's something inside of there where there's something they don't like about it. And so when you can create enough safety with people, they pretty readily admit that to you. And then in the counseling world, you just call that change talk. And so you build on those pieces. And then when you have the trust and credibility, then I can help them see some of these other pieces of the puzzle that they're just not aware of, like the whole science part of it. And they're like, yeah, you're right. It is exactly like that, exactly this time of day. And that's exactly what happens to me. And they're like, wow, yeah. And so sometimes it's just about getting someone to say, like, is this working for you anymore? Is this really helping you to relax? Or is this actually making you more anxious and more grumpy and more tired? And so it's about creating safety for them to see the truth. And then the other side of that, with the women part, it's about helping them have better ways of getting their needs met.
What are your thoughts, Amber, on moderation, and how do you approach this in your practice?
My thoughts are that it doesn't work. And maybe that's because I'm an addiction counselor and that's just what I've seen over and over and over again. However, I think it's important to try it. So if people are still of the mindset that moderation is going to work, it's probably a bargain is what I call it. But I'm like, let's try it. Let's try all the things to try to make it work. Because that's how I call it. It's like checking all the ideas off the list. And we're not going to get to I need to give it up until we check all the ideas off the list. Like, let's just drink beer, not liquor. Let's just drink on the weekends. Let's only never have more than 3. Only on special occasions. Only 4 times a week. I'll just buy the mini bottles and that way I can control it. I'll know exactly how many drinks I'm drinking. Like all the different things. And I'm like, yeah, let's try that. Let's do it. Let's try it. And then when people bring that up, I'll say, listen, a lot of people I find either can't stick to it consistently, like they can do it sometimes, but they can't do it consistently, or they figure out it's too freaking hard. Like it takes all of your energy and concentration and focus all the time to keep it at this certain level. So a lot of the people I find it's just not worth it. It's like, first of all, the amount of energy it takes to keep it to 2 or 3 drinks is ridiculous. And what good is 2 or 3 drinks really going to do you? So what I do is I set all that up. I say, listen, let's try that. Because for me, most of the time it doesn't work out. And here's why. And I tell them. But every person is different. And I think we need to try that. So I've planted a seed in their mind, and then I let them try it. And then in the back of their mind, they have this seed, and they can see that that is exactly what's happening as they're trying that. Yeah. And so they figure it out faster. That's what I mean when I say you can't skip the bargaining, but you can speed it up.
Mm-hmm. So once people have completed that checklist and they decide to not drink, how do you help people navigate that resentment that builds in recovery, especially when the people around them aren't changing? So if they have a spouse that's still drinking, they have friends that are still drinking, how can they navigate that?
In my experience, it's not so much that they have a ton of resentment. Occasionally, if somebody's spouse is still drinking problematically, they'll be resentful about that. More often, it's that they don't want to inconvenience everyone in their life, and that they're worried that their stopping drinking is going to be weird to other people or make other people feel uncomfortable. So they won't speak up, and they'll say, "Oh, it's fine," and then they'll put themselves in a bad situation because they're telling other people, "It's fine, it doesn't bother me." Meanwhile, of course, it's in early recovery, it is bothering you. It probably won't eventually, but it is in the beginning. And so in my experience, it's more about that than it is about the resentment. It's like, I don't want my issue to make other people have to give up something they like.
Amber, what would you say to someone listening right now who feels just completely lost in trying to help someone they love?
I would say that you are not powerless, contrary to popular belief, and that you do have influence. And even if you can't fix it, and even if you can't make it better, if you will try the things that I teach you, you'll feel better and your relationship will be way better. So even if you can't make this person completely stop, these other techniques, you're just going to feel so much better because you're going to be acting in accordance with your values. Because when you're doing all those other things, you're doing things that really don't fit with what you think is right either. And so you're in a shame spiral too, because you lost it, because you're keeping secrets, because you're sneaking around doing stuff, because you're saying ugly things, and you don't like those things about yourself either. And so when you can stop doing that, you can feel good about your side of the street. And so no matter what happens, you get to walk away feeling wholehearted and really good about how you handled it.
I think that's a really great point. That's a really great point. Amber, we're going to link to your YouTube and to your site in our show notes so everyone will be able to find you. But I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on today. It's been such a wealth of knowledge. I wish that we had met you 6 or 7 years ago, and we could have maybe approached things a little bit differently in our family.
Yeah, I hear that all the time. I wish I met you sooner. So that's a big part of the reason for the YouTube is like trying to get these messages out there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you all for listening to Sisters in Sobriety, and we will see you next week.
This was Sisters in Sobriety.
Thank you for listening and being with us today.
If you want to learn more about sobriety and meet your community, find us at sistersinsobriety.substack.com.
Are you a sister in sobriety? Then reach out on social media. We'd love to hear from you.
If you're feeling generous, leave us 5 stars and a review and follow us wherever you listen.
You'll never miss an episode. Until next time.